I am sat and about to drive the very first Porsche ever made, 356 number 1, the Gmund roadster. I have been given permission to drive it around this event, Rennsport Reunion. This is a Porsche festival that happens every 5 years in Laguna Seca in California. This car is utterly priceless, really. And without this car, none of this festival, none of this interest, none of this fascination in rear-engined Porsches would exist. So come with me on a drive, probably quite a slow but very, very special drive in this. I'm Jonny Smith. Welcome to the Late Break Show. Okay. Right, about a centimetre of throttle, I'm told. There it is. You can't hear it because there's a lot of other Porsches about. Like that. Right, so you've got like a weird kind of walking stick handbrake, which I'm going to release on the trigger there. And then full crash gearbox, normal H pattern. Remember, it's a VW, it's an adapted Volkswagen, this whole thing. And it's a very light steer. The whole thing weighs less than 600 kilos. And I'm going to try not to think about its importance or its value as we cruise through a very busy Rennsport. Right, okay, clutch all the way in, into first. Just driving it off the plinth. Yeah. I am driving an absolute museum piece. It's very surreal indeed. Right, so, like I said before, this is the most significant car here. It is the very first Porsche.
I say first Porsche, that is partly true, because there was a car before this 356/1 that I'm driving today. It was an experimental, highly streamlined race car built in 1939 by Ferdinand Porsche himself, the guy responsible for the original Beetle or KDF-Wagen straight-through joy car, as it was known initially. And this car was called the Type 64. Strictly speaking, it was a Volkswagen Skunk Works vehicle. Like this 356/1, it used a VW drivetrain and various suspension and brake parts, but the Type 64 was never actually road registered. This, the number 1 as it's known, actually began life as the Type 356 VW sports car, or the VW Sport for short. The idea for the vehicle was conceived back in the summer of 1947 by Porsche's son, Ferry, and by February the 5th, 1948, Ferry, who was by now in charge of the fledgling company, took his place behind the wheel for the very first time. Porsche themselves call the car I'm driving number 1 because it's the first road legal Porsche car, the first car built by Porsche as a car company under the Porsche name. Porsche had the 356/1 certified for road use on June the 8th, 1948, and the company uses that date and this car as its starting point.
I'm really, really nervous and excited in equal measure because this really is the Godfather, you know. Looking at all this stuff as we go by. There's a Gmund Streamliner 356 race car. But you see this, the first one, was actually mid-engine, not rear. The engine is directly behind my seat, based upon or is a 1131cc very early split-screen Beetle engine. Based on the 25 horsepower 1131 flat 4, but with a little bit more horsepower. And same gearbox, I presume, so they flip the engine in the box round. It is so busy here at the event. You know, there's an open paddock, there's cars coming and going. I'm stood waiting for a Porsche tractor to move out of the way. This is so special. And there's a beautiful 356 coming the other way. So, 1948. Only 3 years after the war. Second gear for the first time. But it's so, I mean, the steering is so light, and if you've watched the Late Break Show before, you'll know that my first car was a Beetle, and the relationship is so close on these early cars. I mean, obviously this is a prototype, and it actually did get sold. It hasn't always been owned by Porsche. They bought it back. I believe they sold it to a Swiss chap who used it and modified it. The deck lid area, there's two deck lids. There's the engine lid and there's the another access lid.
Porsche hasn't always owned 356 1 though. After making its debut at the Geneva Motor Show trade fair and suffering from continuous lacking funds, Porsche sold this car on Swiss soil to a Zurich-based German architect called Peter Kaiser for 7,500 Swiss francs. Kaiser replaced the cable brakes with hydraulic wheel cylinders and actually tinkered with the Porsche signature to make it read Pesco. The idea being it sounded Italian and therefore would not function as advertising for Porsche. Due to various problems with the vehicle, he actually sold it to a car dealer about a year later. And after that, this unappreciated classic changed hands in Switzerland every couple of months until sports car fan Hermann Schulthess discovered the treasure in 1952. Schulthess got Porsche to install new brakes, convert the engine to 1.5 litres so he could take part in Swiss slalom events, which he did until 6 nuns drove into the back of him during a trip up the mountains. He used the significant repairs required as an opportunity to make further enhancements, including larger wheel arches and round tail lights. After further changes in ownership, the number 1 eventually made its way back to Porsche.
Just pausing because this is the car park for Rennsport, one of the general car parks. Right, off we go. Into second. And you've got a load of 911s going around the track now, around Laguna Seca. Up there's the corkscrew. And they I want to say a massive thank you to Porsche because they just said, yeah, if you want to drive it, you can. We'll trust you on your own. You don't need to be chaperone, which is just a lovely little clock on the glove box there. They've warmed it up for me on the plinth. I've got a 911 behind me. Of course, these early cars, or the early designs of 356s, they had what they call the V screen, so a split windscreen, which I think ended in the early 50s. And it's so Spartan, you know. Early Porsches are so simple. I think that's often the draw of early Porsches and early 911s, all sorts. It's the simplicity, simple driving pleasure, usually rugged, reliable. I've got a proper lump in my throat driving this actually. Clutch is really nice. They say you've got to use it to the floor. And basically every Porsche that I see, I'm like, I am your father, Luke. Everything, every single Porsche that goes past me is related to this. How special is that? Little did they know that it would spawn such a sort of cult, a following. That's lovely. And although I'm not driving this fast, it's not the point, is it? It's the fact that you get to drive it at all. It is a priceless car. It's such a significant car. With the DNA so related to Ferdinand Porsche's first creation, the Beetle. KDF wagon. I love looking over those characterful front wings. Remember, all 356s were one-piece body. And the Gmund cars made in Gmund.
One of the reasons this car is sometimes referred to as the Gmund Roadster, and also very early 356s, is because of where they were made. You see, the Porsche company had fled to Gmund in Austria during the heavy bombing of Stuttgart during World War II. But production post-war wasn't really very feasible, and as a result, just 52 chassis were made in Gmund.
This is like the Rockstar car here. You got to respect your elders, right? I don't think anyone's going to pull out in front of me in a hurry. So I can't believe they're letting me drive this damn car. I've driven a lot of Porsches before, everything from 356s up to Taycans. In fact, I was one of the first press in the world to drive the Taycan, and this feels like I've sort of bookended it. World exclusive, doing launch control in a Taycan, and now I'm here. When you go past the 959s there, go past all the Speedsters. I mean, a Speedster's a seriously rare car now. There will come a time when this car will not be used, I suppose. It will probably sit in a museum, and I'm sure this has been restored on a rolling basis. But look at that, wow. How cool is this? Well, what a special experience this is, hey? I am going past 962 Le Mans cars with the same badge. This is the first car to have the Porsche badge. Come on. Put it back in its box. There we go, right. Shut it off, handbrake on. Wow. That was really special, actually. Felt extremely odd, but like good odd, you know. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Late Break Show. If you haven't subscribed already, then I'd love you to subscribe. That was a first drive in the first Porsche. Probably I'll never do that again. Proper pinch me moment. Ciao.